it just goes to show you can't rely on AI, right? It's a tool in the toolbox, but like lots of people say, it's going to replace all these people. It shouldn't replace hardly anybody, right?
Welcome back to Emphasis Tech Talks, the podcast for business leaders leveraging cutting-edge technology to raise their bottom lines. I'm your host, David Clausen of Emphasis Tech. Our guest today is Brandy Johnson, the CTO at Babcock and Wilcox. Brandy will share some wisdom for managing remote workforces and protecting the IP in the face of AI, and many other important topics. This episode has a lot to unpack. Be sure to like and subscribe so that you're notified of future videos as they're released. So, hey, Brandy, thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate you being on. Let's jump right into it. So one of the things I'm thinking about in thinking about your role is about the highly skilled people that you have to have in order to do the kind of work that you're doing. Tell me a little bit about how do you recruit that kind of talent, and then how do you keep them engaged and build that rapport and have them involved in your team?
Great. That's a great question. We have, when we're deploying our new technology, and this is like earth-shattering, next novel hydrogen generation technology, some of these new technologies we're doing, we really need the best of the best in the field. And so, we recruit based mostly on people we know and their networks to get the really skilled folks. And one of the other things we've been able to do is since COVID, we've broadened our horizons a little bit, and we don't need to be local anymore. So that opened our talent pool up significantly when we started looking for talent outside of just the local area and trying to convince people to move to where we are, right? So we don't have to convince them to move anymore. We understand how to use the technology that's available to us to help them participate in all of our team meetings and get them engaged. And so we now have folks not only just across the United States, but really around the world supporting us. And we were able to find that talent that way and using the people's networks and be able to really find the highly skilled talent we needed.
Wow, it's amazing how much that COVID scenario changed the workplace. To me, that's been the biggest impact. And today, I know there's candidates out there that are highly skilled, and frankly, the higher skilled they are, the more likely they're going to require that their role is remote. So that is becoming the big ticket, more so than money and more so than most of the benefits you can think of. At least that's been our experience. So working remote fits really well into the technology field and what we do. So I know that there's a number of organizations now that are trying to make their people come back into the office, but every place that I see that happening, it's really disruptive, and it's not flying as well as a lot of folks would like for it to.
Yeah, I actually just had that conversation with somebody today about coming back into the office, and I'm like, but we have built our teams now so that they're globally dispersed. So when you look at bringing people back into the office, you're not actually solving the problem that you think you have. You're making it worse, because now the people who come into the office have the conversations with the people that are there. But then the people who are still remote get cut off, right? And so it's harder to engage them if not everybody is remote. I'm not saying you can't ever be in the office, right? We find it actually very important to bring our folks together from time to time and get them all together for like a week at a time. And we're doing important things, but it's really almost harder when you have that mixed, some in the office, some remote. And, I will say from managing a remote organization, you have to be much more intentional about your leadership, right? Like you really have to think about it, right? Because you're not just going to run into Joe down at the coffee pot anymore, right? So now you have to go, I have to make sure I reach out on Teams and message them. And, I haven't been in a meeting with this person in some time, right? So set up a meeting with them or send them an IM. But you really have, from a leadership perspective, you have to be more intentional about what you're doing.
Wow, that is so true. Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm going to confess a little bit. Being a technology person and a little bit of an introvert, having to actually think about engaging with people is not necessarily, the first thought that comes to mind. So I'll also say that for those that are managing technology people, know that there's a risk that those folks will be happy to go work in the dark corner forever. And, so be sure and take that. What I'm hearing from you, Brandy, is we've got to take that extra step and reach out and go make that touch point. And as you said, be purposeful about it, and make that happen. So, yeah, I've had to do that. I've found that, and learned that about myself over this period of time. And, but I do find that, yeah, if I'll actually mark it on the calendar, make it go happen, then it's all good. But I really do have to be intentional about that. So, let's also talk about, and I know you're working in the, the technology space from a scientific kind of perspective, but there's also software and systems that support that on the back end. Is there a time, can you think of a challenge that you've had in trying to implement, and maybe it's just about a procedure, but implement something new in the organization that was very challenging, and then how did you overcome that?
Yeah, so I was asked to build a global engineering organization. And when I looked at our global engineering organization, I had a couple of main centers of excellence. And each of those main centers of excellence are 100-year-old organizations. And now I had to integrate them, right, with our team. And one of the things you find is they each had their own tools, right? So the one group used one 3D modeling software. The other group used another 3D modeling software. One used a different P&ID software, right? And it went on and on and on. Nobody was using the same thing. We used something different for structural analysis. And to bring those two groups together to really figure out how to select what technologies we needed and then how to implement them was extremely challenging. When you talk about really change management with these organizations, it was, and we're talking, they're global, right? They weren't all both in the United States. We were two different global organizations. So you had to learn each other's culture and how to help really build that change management. And I would say, we had parts that were more challenging than others, right? Because some people are like, look, I'm not changing my 3D modeling software. I've been doing it this way for 20 years, right? And so what we ended up doing in a lot of respects is we changed from something that neither of the two had. So we went to an all new engineering suite. So everybody was learning new tools together. And, and it was still extremely challenging because there's culture clashes and there's, you can't take this away from me. You can't take that away from me. But I think, and it takes a long time to implement it, right? So when you start thinking about these big changes like that, you think, oh, well, we can get this done in a year. And by the time you get done, it's like 3 years to get it all done. And, and it really is a lot of change management along the way and doing that. And I think that, the piece that we missed out on early in our first in that implementation is we did not understand the cultural differences from the organizations, right? So we had two deeply entrenched 100-year-old engineering organizations, and we did not approach the cultural change and, the different countries and the way they work and all of that. And we really had to circle back around to do that, to get everybody engaged in that process. And that was, and I think as we think more about global entities and how we work globally and we share resources globally, really understanding the culture that you're working with and the people that they're engaged with is really super important, right? So they might say yes, but does that mean yes, they agree with you? Or does that mean yes, they just hear you. I heard you, right? And I think that's one of the things that we really had to work on was the culture side.
Okay. Yeah. That would be challenging. And we've run into some of that as well with some of the global resources we've worked with. But you're 100% right. So is yes really yes? Is okay meaning we're okay? Yeah. And sometimes you just have to call it out that way. All right. I heard you saying okay. Now, does that mean what I think it does? Yeah, exactly. So, so conversely, uh, has there been an effort that you've had that went really well? And why do you think that it did so?
Yeah, so right now we are working on deploying our bright loop chemical looping technology, which is a novel hydrogen generation technology. And so when you think about things in the energy space, it takes a long time to make those changes. And this is a technology that we've really been working on for 20 years, but we're at the stage now where we're trying to deploy it. And I think one of the things that has worked so well for us is we intentionally brought in the right mix of people who have not been entrenched in our company or even in our industry. And we brought in those critical viewpoints, right? It's really about having all the different perspectives. And then we're working actually with engineering folks that are outside our company. We're like, we don't have to do this all ourselves. We can use folks who have deep skills we need a deep skill here in CO2 compression. We don't need to develop that ourselves. We can go find that and work for those people. And I think that's been really how we've made tons and tons of progress in just a short period of time, in 2 years, to commercially have us ready to deploy the technology, is by using the depth, understanding like what the different pieces are and who might have a depth of knowledge there that we don't have to develop ourselves, and really using all these outside partners to come in and bringing in the other viewpoints. So we don't get channel vision, right? You have that different perspectives, and that has really helped, I think, drive that technology forward for us.
So I think from a business leadership perspective, when do you know to make a change in your technology? Again, I'm referring more to business systems and that sort of thing, or even your processes. When do you know that you need to make a change? And when do you know when's the right timing to pull that trigger?
Oh, that's the gazillion-dollar question, isn't it? Like, when do you know when to do that? And I think, one of the things that we try to do is we've got a bunch of us that try to keep up with what's happening around us, right? And are we seeing implementations of other things? Is there a way, if we implement this new software, like everybody talks about generative AI, right? How could we implement that into what we're doing and make it make value, not just be cool, right? So it's really, we have to be intentional about it. And when I think about even our engineering technologies and when we need to make that transition, there's usually some driver, right? There's been a significant improvement in like the 3D modeling software. Like, we've got it now, so our P&IDs tie into our 3D model and everything is connected. And if you change something here, it changes it everywhere and identifies it. And it's one big data set. That's a huge change from where we were just drawing in 2D CAD, right? So we knew that's a change we had to make. And now as we go forward, it's like, okay, how do we use the AI, or how do we use the IoT and some of these other things? And I think when you figure out you need to make that change is when you see other things are moving around you, right? You go, okay, or if you feel something's broken and not working, like if you're doing the same thing every day, yet you're not getting the same answer, right? Or it's just not working, right? Like we've got a lot of processes that were built on old technology, and like you had to fill out this form, right? Well, we know like that's broken, right? So how do we do it with the new technology, right? So you don't have to fill out a form anymore. It's in about, oh, the data is here. Oh, if I build a dashboard, you can see all the data and you can see now how to make decisions, right? And I think that's one of the things that we look at a lot is how can you visualize what's actually going on? And sometimes you can see you need to make a change just because visually it's like, oh, that's not working. Or, I've only got all this data on paper forms somewhere, or, it's someplace else and I can't see the data, right? So it's like, how do you get the data in a place? So that means you've got to change things. And I think that's, it's really hard to know when to change, but you've got to be always open and looking to, can we do this better in a better way?
That's good advice. And if you're still to the point today, really almost regardless of the size of your organization, that you're having to go and ask someone for a piece of paper in order to get the information you need, then that's probably a pretty good clue that you need to make some progress.
You're decades behind, right?
Yeah. Well, and so I'm wondering, I keep thinking, or maybe it's just a hope, that the same thing will happen with Excel spreadsheets, that eventually people will quit using Excel spreadsheets to jerry rig and get the answers that they're looking for in some, disjointed kind of way that they do with a lot of these spreadsheets. And, hey, I'm not knocking Excel. It's a great tool. And I even think that it's a real good place to start if you're trying to figure out what pieces of data you need to put together to, get the right picture and tell the story that you need to tell. Hey, if you're comfortable with Excel and you want to use it to do that, that's fine. But you need to recognize that there's going to be a point where you're going to have to come back and say, all right, now that we've figured that out, let's productionize and let's make this a real thing. And oh, by the way, we shouldn't have something critical to the business that's in an Excel file that's sitting on someone's desktop that if that hard drive crashes, we're all scrambling for 3 days trying to figure out how to recover from this.
I agree completely.
Yeah. So you mentioned AI. So I've got to ask that AI question. How do you think that will change the way that your team works going forward? And I guess so how do you think that's going to change the way your team's going to work? And do you think that your organization, or maybe better put, maybe even your industry, is ready for that?
Oh, wow, that's a really hard question. So
I'm full of them today.
Yeah. So, I think I'm not sure how it's going to change how my team works, right? I think some of the things, it's clear. I mean, it's easy to see a path to the things we repeatedly do, right? We put out proposals to our customers. There's a whole lot of that stuff where AI can help us, right? And because we're saying really the same thing over and over again, but AI can help us put in a little different context. We struggle with protecting our IP, right? And there's a lot of things you can do with AI, right? But how do we make sure when we use it, it truly is protecting our IP, right? And so it's in your network and it's not getting out. And I think there's still hesitancy to put anything that has your true IP in it into any AI machine, even if it's only on your network, right? Because there's a fear that. So I think really protecting IP, and you hear that all over, right? It's not just our industry. It's, that's the actors and the singers, right? They're all worried about the same thing. And it's that owning that IP and not losing the IP, because that's makes us who we are and makes us the ability to do what we do. And the second part of your question is no, I don't think our industry is ready for AI. And I think because a lot of the folks we deal with, right, whether it's a utility or the big oil and gas folks, I think all of them probably use AI to once in one way, shape, or form doing something. But like on the whole, is our industry ready for that? No, we still have all kinds of protections on stuff, and and how do we protect our IP when we're doing that? How do we share best practices and IP protection? So I think there's a lot of stuff that comes with AI that's really challenging and complicated, and I don't know if anybody's really ready for it, or if it really anybody can see all of the possibilities either.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's true. Well, yeah, I agree that there's a lot to be learned, and there's certainly a lot of work to be done around the IP question. That's the big elephant in the room, if you will, when it comes to the AI discussion, no doubt. Um, but I think you also pointed out kind of what we're hearing from our clients, and even from these podcasts that we're doing, all the different business leaders that we're getting the opportunity to talk to, is that these small iterations in AI. So you mentioned oil and gas. I know of a number of efforts that are happening there where there's some good use of AI. Um, and yeah, I don't want to give away any secrets here, but there's some things happening, and there's some good uses of that data and that technology. Um, but they did it in the right way, in that they made sure their data was good and clean. Then they came back and they iterated over it, and knew they weren't going to get this huge win first rattle out of the box. There would have to be some tweaking to it and so forth. I think where I get concerned is when I hear of folks using it, and they fully trust it. And I don't think we're there yet, frankly.
And the whole thing is you can't fully trust it because it can't always tell or ever tell like what's true and what's fact and fiction that you're giving it, right? If you're just feeding, like, think about your data. You said your data's got to be good and clean. But if you put bad data in, you're going to get it's going to make decisions based on bad data, right?
Right, right. Well, I think I congratulate you on taking what I think is the right approach from that IP perspective, in that you're wanting to make sure that your AI or any future use of that doesn't have carte blanche access to your PI, because I could see AI rifling through and making a decision that says, "Oh, for this proposal, it would be really great if we just plugged in some of this other information that we got from over here." Right? I mean, that's what AI does to a large degree, and so at least that generative AI. So I could see that happening, and I could see someone being so comfortable with it. Maybe they've seen it run now, and they've seen a dozen proposals come through, and they all look good. And then all of a sudden, now here's this one with this IP in it, and they just let it go out the door. They was getting late on Friday, that kind of scenario, and it just goes out the door. And that's the kind of thing that once it leaves, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to get it back.
Yeah, that is absolutely the case. And it just goes to show you can't rely on AI, right? It's a tool in the toolbox, but like lots of people say, it's going to replace all these people. It shouldn't replace hardly anybody, right? What it's going to do is it's a tool for you to make your job easier, and maybe you can now get more done because you can be more productive. But, I don't know that I see a day when jobs go away, especially in our industry because of it. But maybe we can create fewer jobs because as more work comes in or things, that folks can be more productive with the use of AI, but I don't see us. So I think that's things that a lot of people worry about, right? Is that AI will replace people, but you've always got to have those eyeballs on what's actually going on.
Yeah, and we've seen that in the in the tech world. I mean, I can tell you this is like about the third or fourth time that I've been told that developers will no longer be needed uh, due to different technologies that are coming along. So, yeah, certainly some of those technologies have changed the way that we work. Absolutely, made us more efficient. Absolutely, made sure that what we were developing and deploying was of better quality, more secure. Absolutely, all of those things. But it didn't take away the need for someone to be there coding and developing those applications. And I mean, I don't know what the future is going to bring from the AI perspective. In other words, 20 years from now, will it be doing all of the development work? I don't know. I'm hard pressed to believe that, but it may reduce. It may make where one developer can do the job of 5 developers or something like that. That I could see that easily happening, but it's a long ways down the road. I think they've got a lot of work to do, a lot of improvements to make before it's ready for that kind of deployment for sure.
And I think when you think about creating new technologies like the new bright loop chemical looping technology that we're developing, right? AI can't do that, right? Is AI a tool that our folks can use as they're doing that? Yeah, but that's creating a whole new thing, right? And so I think it's a tool. It's a tool in the toolbox.
Right. Are there any other technologies, especially as it relates to systems that are coming down the pike that you're looking at that you think might change the way that you all work outside of the AI discussion?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we think about is when the plants that we design, when they get up and operating, there is so much data there, right? So a little bit of that is like, can you use AI to review the data and to do some of that? But still, it's like, how do you capture all the data? And what do you do with the data? And how do you keep it clean? And how do you use that then to make the plant run better? Right. And, we talk a lot about predictive maintenance and how do we, can you predict when that bearing is going to fail? Right. Can you predict, based on what the plant previous, has operated? Can you predict when you're going to make off-spec hydrogen? Or can you predict when you can make more hydrogen based on ambient conditions or something else? And I think it's really the operations, the day-to-day operations of a plant is where we're thinking with the data to really help improve plant performance, to be more efficient with, utilities making power, us making hydrogen, all of those types of things.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, so as you're talking there, I'm sorry, but I had to keep thinking, well, you call emphasis tech. That's how you get that data collected and you get it captured and get it clean. But so anybody that needs that, be sure and give us a call. We'll be glad to help you out. But there is some advancements in that area, though, and we are looking at, and we are working very closely with some folks on data quality checks and balances and using AI for that. So that's one that's really seeing some good traction, and I think that will be a good use of AI going forward. So we're looking forward to that one and continuing to work on it. What tips would you give to the audience about using technology and making sure that that's a positive project or a positive initiative within their organization?
So I think any good project has to have good project planning, good project management. It doesn't matter if it's a new technology development, if it's a new power plant you're building, right? You have to go back to project management 101 and have a good schedule, understand what it's going to take from a resource perspective. And I think we forget about almost everything we do as a project. So how do we really hone our project management skills to be positive and to understand, are we on schedule? Are we on budget? Are we, how are we actually performing? It doesn't matter whether you're implementing new technology, new software in your company, or whether you're developing a new hydrogen generation technology. It's about project management 101 and understanding project management. And so we've really just got to be focused on that. So I think that's one thing. And I think the other is be always inquisitive and always wanting to learn, right? I've gotten where I've gotten in my life because I'm always reading. I'm reading everything, everywhere, listening to podcasts, doing all that stuff. And you've got to read and you've got to learn and you've got to, what are other people doing? What are other avenues? And I think being inquisitive, how can we do this better? Is there a way to do that? Is there something out there that helps us? Right. And then also being open to not always reinventing the wheel, right? If somebody else is doing it, like use somebody else's something, right, to do it. You don't have to invent it yourself, right, to be able to use it and be efficient with it.
Wow. All great points. Very, very good. Wow. That's really good, because your point about not reinventing the wheel. Wow. How many times have I seen organizations try to do that? And the project management piece. So I want to dig just a little bit deeper on that, because there's this push towards using Agile project methodologies. And certainly I've seen that work really well in certain settings. But I've also seen some places that, continue to really struggle with that Agile type of methodology. Is your organization using Agile today? And how did that work if you are, how did that work transferring from or transitioning from the waterfall kind of methodologies to an Agile?
Yeah. So because we're building plants in my organization, we're not Agile. We're kind of traditional waterfalls type project management, right? But there's aspects that you use of everything, right? So I think like the people who do it best use aspects of different types of project management, right? But what are we doing, right? So there's something here, right? That what they do here works well. So if I implement that into my overall project management, I don't think you have to go all the way one direction or the other, right? It's use the best of everything to find the way you do it. But at the heart of all of it, you got to have a schedule, you got to have a budget, and you have to have a project plan, right? And I think understanding that piece and because people will start down projects all the time without a project plan, right? And you need a plan to get to the end.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Really good. Well, thank you, Brandy. I really appreciate you taking the time with us today. How can our audience stay in touch with you and follow what you're doing?
So we are at www.babcock.com. That is BABCOCK.com. That's Babcock and Wilcox. Bright Loop hydrogen generation technology is what we're working on every day. And you can find me on LinkedIn at Brandy Johnson. So thank you.
All right. Perfect. Thank you. Everyone, take care. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe so that you know about the upcoming podcast. And we'll see you next time.